Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stefanie Couch. This podcast is about branding, building, and business. It also highlights the grit that it takes to be successful in business and in life. Let's get started. Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. My name is Stefanie Couch. I'm excited today to have my friend from LinkedIn and in the real world, Deb Curtis. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you. Great to be here, Stefanie, and especially one-on-one and in a video like this versus just texting back and forth on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a real life connection with. I met so many amazing people on LinkedIn, but you were one of the first people that I connected with last year that I kind of started following, and we reached out to each other. You have a real presence and a big following on LinkedIn. I don't know what your follower count is. What is it, like 30,000 now, something like that?
I finally went over the hump, 30,000.
Oh, yes. That's amazing. How long have you been working at LinkedIn before we get into the jets of you?
Oh my goodness. So we've all been on LinkedIn probably since it started or so.
Yeah.
We didn't know what it was. And I was just accepting recruiters, other bankers in my field, not knowing what it was. And then we put it to bed for a while, and because it just didn't seem fun back then.
Yeah.
And then it started to change. And then the whole concept of personal branding was the big hot topic a few years ago. So when I started to really visit this platform on a daily basis, it would have been just over 2 years ago. And I made a commitment. We all make a commitment. Well, let's try. And I thought, I'm going to do it for 1 year. And you might remember me telling you this story.
Yep.
I said, 1 year, I'm going to show up every day, post and comment. And it's been a great ride that 1 year. But for your listeners, I wanted to give up a lot because I thought, what am I doing this for?
Yeah, especially that first 3 to 6 months where you post and you spent 30 minutes on this super crazy heartfelt post, and you post it and you get 2 likes, and it's some friend that you basically asked to go like it.
Yeah.
Those are hard. And it's easy to get. I mean, I think that's what happens with most people. You start with, the rocket fuel, and then it gets hard and the discipline wears off, the motivation fades, and then people quit. And that's really where you have to keep going. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, 30,000 followers is huge. You have done that in 2 years, but only because you kept going after month 3, 4, 5 when you had, 1,000 followers or whatever it was. So it's lesson for everyone listening that really anything in life, it's going to get hard. I think that's my description of entrepreneurship.
I agree. And I would say at the 1 year mark is when I started to see more return on followers and connections and more questions about who I am. So then I feel like my tires were pumped up a little bit. But to say it's easier in year 2, doing it all over again because I made that commitment. No, it's just like entrepreneurship, like you said, Steph. It there's highs and lows, but you got to keep going and just pick up your pants and just keep on moving forward.
Absolutely. I want to talk about you and your background. You have an amazing story. You have done a lot of really cool things in your life and your career. But one thing that struck me was your personal brand. You have, I like hats. I think everyone that follows me knows that. I'm obviously today wearing one. And you also have a signature headpiece, we'll call it. And so I think that's actually what we connected over was hey, I wear hats and you wear, bandanas or headbands or any of those things. And so, tell me a little bit about who Deb is and how you got started, in your career, some of the things you've gone through, and a little more about where you are and what you're doing today.
Yeah. Oh, I love the headbands and I love the hats. So, then
to decorate their hair in a way that's not traditional, right? We put something else on it.
That's right. That's called personal branding, I think.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, okay. So my journey really started out rough as a child, and then college education was never something that I was granted because just living with my father. My mother was out of the picture. We didn't have a lot of money. And I still remember to this day, my senior year in high school, Stefanie, everybody asking, what are you going to school for? What are you going to get a degree in? Who are you going to be? What are you going to do? And I was the one and the few that wasn't going anywhere. And when I would share that with my peer students, they kind of looked at me like, well, that's nuts.
Yeah.
And I almost felt bullied in a way, like you're not going to college. Well, you know what? I took that fuel, Stefanie, and that burn, as you would say, and made something of it and thought, you know what? I'm going to work harder than the rest and move my way up the corporate ladder, and show my friends from school that you don't need a college education if you've got the fire in the belly to work hard. Yeah. So that was my mission. And it might have took a little bit longer, perhaps, than having that college degree, but I did it, and it wasn't easy. My first career job was at a finance company for 18 years. And I started in the mid-'80s into the 90s. And this is when employers really valued employees. That's why I was on the job for 18 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. You don't hear very many people saying that nowadays that are not already like in that long where it's about to be over, retirement type thing. That's a long time to work somewhere.
It is. And at that time, there were peers of mine working at the same company that were there for 25 years or longer. Yeah. Well, I thought, oh my gosh, employment was awesome back then. The benefits, just how they treated you. You got a turkey for Thanksgiving and Christmas parties where you could stay at a hotel, and dinner and drinks were paid for. I mean, they really put a lot of value into their employees. Mm-hmm. Well, that first job, I wanted to be promoted to a branch manager. And being promoted to a branch manager, a couple of things I found out. They wanted you to have a college education, and I didn't have it. And then I learned, and they were very upfront and bold about this reason why as well, because back then they could be. I was a woman, and they did not promote women to branch managers of this finance company because the position required me as the branch manager to repossess vehicles. Back then, we didn't have repo companies. It was a finance company. We put an auto loan on the books. If you don't pay the loan, I have to go to court, get judgment, and then I have to go find my car in the city, call my tow truck guy and hook it up, and away we go. Yeah. So they
hands-on approach there.
Yeah. So they said no to me, but the ironic story behind it all was I always went on repo runs and sat in the passenger seat with my male boss doing the job with him. So I would...
Isn't that funny how you're often already doing the thing that they say you can't do? It's just not on paper.
Correct. So I positively remained persistent and kept pushing them that, listen, I can do this. I'm already doing it. I don't need the college degree. I've been working here at that point. I think it was 10 years. Mm-hmm. I think 10 years of employment would supersede 4 years of a college degree.
Absolutely.
Maybe, right? And finally, they agreed to put me into a probationary period where I could be a branch manager. There was an opening at a location, but try it out for 6 months without paying me the extra management pay and see how Deb does.
How long did you ask for that yes before you got it? Before you got the maybe yes, which wasn't a hard yes, but still, it's progress.
It was a year at least.
Yeah.
And I almost...
Good for you for being diligent on that and not giving up. Because
that's... Yeah. But here's the thing. I knew I could go somewhere else, but in my mind, I thought I don't have that college education that they're going to look for on my resume. So I'm going to have to put another 10 years in somewhere else to get to this promotion. So I remained loyal, and they were good to me still, besides the fact that they wouldn't promote me for being a woman. But after the year, they agreed. And then I was on that probationary period for 6 months, and I kicked butt.
That is awesome.
I did. I was in the top 3 out of all of the locations as far as results. And they finally agreed to promote me, and not the same pay as my male counterparts earned, but they promoted me. And Stephanie, that was all that mattered to me, was to have that promotion on my resume.
Yeah.
In addition, I opened up the door for other women that worked for the company to get promoted. So that felt
Amazing.
like the world, I felt like I was opening up the world for women.
Yeah. It's hard to be that first and only in anything, especially when you're in a more male dominated place. And I mean, openly saying like women basically aren't welcome in this position. For you to like you literally broke the door down, and that's really hard to do because it takes so much resilience on the part of the person that's doing it. And like you said, you could have probably gone somewhere else and had a little easier time had it not have been for that college degree. But even with that, probably could have gotten there. But good for you for doing that, and then paving the way for other people to not have to break the door down because it's already paved.
There you go. Well, as time progressed, I was successful. I was a top branch manager. Then the next promotion was a district manager, and that wasn't happening. They weren't even considering me to be a district manager. Yeah, I knew it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take my resume now and I'm going to show my promotion and all my accolades. And that was when I started to go into banking and business banking and SBA lending. So the first 18 years of my career was in the trenches of finance, secondary auto loans, understanding tax returns and understanding cash flow and what people can afford for a payment, understanding impact of obtaining a loan. And if you don't pay your bills on time, what can happen? So that was all real helpful. So then I went into small business lending and SBA lending, and I never looked back. It's just been a journey of learning how to support small business owners as a business banker, a commercial loan portfolio manager, where you would visit with small business owners on a weekly basis to hear about their highs and their lows and everything in between. And I kept hearing about this acronym, SBA. And that's when I started to learn that banks who don't want to take a risk on conventional lending for a small business can look into lending where the SBA backs the loan that they're putting on their bank books. There's a government guarantee, whereas if the loan goes bad, the government will guarantee that loan up to 75%. And it was common. I saw a lot of banks say, we're not going to put this business loan on the books conventionally, but if the government's going to say, hey, bank, if this loan goes bad, we'll guarantee it 75%, that will open up the floodgates for more credit approvals for small business owners. And that's the road I really started to drive down.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that it's out there as an available thing to even go ask, because they just think, well, I don't have it. And business credit is kind of an elusive animal. Like, people understand, I think, a little more personal credit. They probably bought a car, maybe a house, whatever it is. But when you start talking about business loans and business credit, it's very interesting for people that haven't ever had an LLC before or had a business before. Even myself, when we started, there's a lot of Googling involved on how do you get your LLC and what's the difference between an S corp and an LLC and a sole proprietorship. And it's confusing for people. So talk a little bit more about, I know you're in a particular area now with SBA loans where you're doing something very specific, but how would someone go about researching, and what's your best resources to talk about someone who maybe is an entrepreneur that wants to look into SBAs? What would you say the first step of them to going and finding out about this?
Yes. So the SBA, as I said, backs the banks that do the financing. Where your listeners need to understand is every bank, they're all different sizes. There's the big Wells Fargos. There's the regional banks like a U.S. bank. There's the community banks that, have a name representing something in your community. There's credit unions. There's even non-bank lenders. And they all have different in-house business credit policies, which means you could apply for an SBA loan at all those different various institutions I just mentioned and hear a different answer whether they can do the loan or not.
Yeah.
It's really complicated, very complicated.
It is very complicated.
It is. So for the folks that want to start up a business or need a debt consolidation loan, they want to buy a business, there's different credit requests that can be backed by the SBA. Where do you start? I would recommend start with your local bank that you're banking with already for those loans. And if you're not getting any answers, then you just got to start applying all over the place. Yeah. There are commercial loan brokers out there that can help place your credit request, but they're going to charge, their loan brokerage fees up front, which is fair because they're doing all the searching for you, and they'll find a place to land your credit approval, which is worth it in my opinion, versus you trying to apply to 10 different places and you might get 9 no's before you find one yes.
And you don't even know, like, hey, this person's automatically going to say no to this. And that person probably knows that based on the parameters that they've worked with before. So like for you, I know you're obviously doing, and we're going to get into that a little more, doing acquisition on already pre-existing businesses where you're helping people kind of partner with SBA loans on that. If you look at something pretty quickly, I'm sure, yes or no, this is probably a hard no. And you're not even going to take people towards that path, which is what anything that you can afford to work with an expert, they've done the ignorance tax already. They've already paid that. Like, it's the same thing with marketing. It's the same thing with social media. Like, yes, you can figure it out. And if you can't afford to pay someone, you don't have much of a choice but to pay that ignorance tax. But if you can speed up the process by going with an expert, it's always a good thing, in my opinion. There's some things that you have to do on your own. You got to figure it out. But if you can partner with someone and move up a year in advance of what you would have all this research and, like you said, apply to 10 or 20 loans, man, that's a huge thing to be able to go in and say, like, hey, I'm going to partner with an expert. So that would be definitely my advice. And like you said, it's very confusing and it is different for every type of business. I'm sure every industry, there's probably certain industries that some banks won't work with, I'm guessing, based on like the risk and all those different things. So I'm glad that you said that, because I think it's the best advice for sure.
Brilliant is my feedback to your statement right there in reply. Brilliant. Ignorance tax is real.
And I've paid a lot of it over the years.
I was done
just as an entrepreneur, sometimes it's just life. Like my husband and I, we've invested in some things before and we thought we were doing so great and we sold it. And now it's like, God, we'd have like $4,000 or $5,000 a month passive income coming in from that thing that we cashed out and thought we were doing so good with that, like $20,000 we made. It's just, you pay that and there's no way around it, especially as you're young and you're risk adverse. And then there's the weighing of the risk. I think life comes down so much to risk. How much are you willing to pay? And how much could you lose? And what's your tolerance for that? And I think business and entrepreneurship is definitely that everyday weighing that out. But
yeah,
you don't have to pay it to get to where we want to go.
Oh, yes. I always say the qualified experts are the ones who've walked through the fire and paid that ignorance tax. So I might have to use that ignorance tax, Stefanie.
Yeah, free. It is true for sure. I heard that from someone else. I didn't make that myself, but I feel that more deeply now that I'm an entrepreneur than I ever did before. That's for sure. Well, I like to talk a little bit about business and kind of some fun things because I consider myself a fun-loving person.
You are.
You and I have another hobby besides the headwear that we have in common. We both love music. And you actually were a lead singer in a band. So tell me a little bit about that before we get into your more professional background.
Yes. I sang in high school a lot. I don't know. Somehow I just found I love music and I have a voice. And I decided after graduating high school, one day I want to be in a band. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. It didn't happen during that first 10, 15 years of my career where I said it took 10 years before I got promoted because I was so focused on getting promoted and earning a good income due to the fact that I could not afford college or was not granted the cash from my mom and dad. It wasn't happening. But along the way, I realized in Milwaukee, there's this big festival called Summerfest, if you've ever heard of that. And it's a huge worldwide festival where all bands, big name bands come in. There's like 20 different stages and main stages. And I'm like, one day, I'm going to play at that Summerfest. And I wasn't in a band yet, but that was a goal of mine. I'm telling you, when we all set a goal, just keep reaching for it, because that was the pinnacle of my life. I auditioned for bands and sang in many of them.
As a lead singer, right?
As a lead singer. And played at that Summerfest 3 different times with 2 different bands. And the last gig that I played at Summerfest, we opened up for, back then it was David Lee Roth.
Okay.
Rest in peace. Anyways, but he was the opening act on a Saturday night on one of the stages. And this was a while ago, so he was pretty popular still back then.
That's amazing.
It was awesome. So it was a Saturday night, and we opened up for him at 6 p.m. And listen, there were probably 8,000 people there, not only to see us, but we had the opportunity to open up for them. And time of my life. That's was so cool. Being in that band. And listen, being in a band is a small business.
A lot of negotiating had to happen there, and a lot of egos, and a lot of things.
Oh my gosh.
Music people are interesting. You know, I grew up in that world too, singing. And then once I got to college, it was at a very elite level of choir, but still we were going all over the country touring. And talk about like competition, and it's competitive sport. People don't realize that. It is. There's a lot going on in there.
You have to have a following, which is your customer base, so to speak.
Yeah.
You have to be a band that can sell alcohol.
Yeah.
Because that is where if the festival or the bar or, you know, whoever's hiring you, they're hiring you because they want to make money on their bar sales.
Yeah.
And bar sales were important. So I was the one that always had to tell people, raise them up high, and let's all tell.
That's marketing right there. I love it. Yeah, it's true. It really is actually. I mean, if you break it down, there's all the portions of marketing and sales, and you know, getting churn to not happen. They want to come back and see you a second time or third time, and and you think about artists that you really like that do really well, and they are doing all those things exceptionally well. I mean, obviously Taylor Swift probably makes more money on her merch and all those things than any of her, you know, music, I'm sure, a lot of times.
Oh my goodness. Right? I mean,
she's like the best example.
She
absolute genius marketing. I don't know if it's her or someone behind her, and it doesn't really even matter, but holy cow, what lessons we could take from that woman. She's amazing.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I think of the lift she gave to the NFL with their merch and their sales.
It's unbelievable, like $300 and something million that they wouldn't have made just because this girl goes to a game. I mean, how do you even describe that? And I love her. She's amazing. So I could talk. We could have a whole podcast just about
oh my gosh
business principles, because she trademarks everything. I mean, just what she did with re-recording her albums, brilliant. I mean, she is more popular now because of that. So she took I think that's the biggest thing I would say is taking the lesson of her worst day was when her masters were sold to Scooter Braun. It was her worst day.
Yeah.
She probably moped for a few days, I'm sure. And then Kelly Clarkson actually texted or tweeted and said, you should re-record your masters and sell them again. And she literally took that and did it. And now everyone that never knew all her first music that was not born and, you know, whenever she recorded it, now they're raving fans watching the NFL because this woman decided to take her worst day and make it something that was like, you won't take me down with this.
That's right.
I think that's the lesson, especially for women, is you're going to get, there's shit's going to happen to you. Everyone, not just women. It's not anyone's fault sometimes, and sometimes it is. It's horrible things that happen. Life will come at you hard, and you have to figure out, what are you made of? what will you do with that lesson, with that failure, with that time that kicks you down and just keeps kicking you? Because it will come. It's just on you of how do you react? Because that's really the only thing that separates people that are in the top success level of the world. Just like with you, you didn't take that. You're not going to be a branch manager. You're a woman. And you said, just wait. Instead of saying, okay, or trying to do something different, or just resigning that you're going to not be a branch manager, which is what I think is the easy thing to say. It would have been so easy for you to just take that and move on and just say, well, I'll just be this for the rest
and
of
most women do take it.
Unfortunately. Yeah. And they're risk adverse. We talked about this before the podcast a little bit. I want to ask some questions about that. You obviously deal with a lot of people that are doing something sort of risky by taking on a business loan, taking, the job, that W-2, and saying, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. It was the riskiest thing I feel like I've ever done, but also the best thing I've ever done is going out on my own. How do you talk through that with people? And what do you say, especially to women out there that are listening to this saying, I'm really just scared. I'm fearful of what could happen, what might not work. What is your thought on that? And how would you tell people to address that?
Yeah. And that is a common ask and question for the women too, especially. A couple of things. When you acquire an established, proven, profitable business, you're purchase financing it like you finance your home, right?
Yep.
Well, when you purchase finance an established business, the money is already proven under due diligence. The bank does, and I help with due diligence as well by the IRS tax returns. It's proven that if you go in and take over this business and replicate what the founder is doing today, and that might not be much today, Stefanie, because usually these original business owners that delegated and raised up this business to be profitable over the years, they have a team of seasoned employees that are running the show. I tell women and men, when you transition into these businesses, it's like a career employment promotion to CEO, right? Yeah. We all want to climb that ladder, and sometimes we're stuck on the corporate ladder when actually we could hop off and promote ourselves to acquire these businesses. If you do it the right way, like you would in corporate America, and you have people skills, management skills, customer service, the all of the goods that corporate taught us, makes all of you fantastic candidates to take over these established baby boomer owned businesses. So here's where people get confused. They think, well, if I'm purchase financing a home, I got to have money to pay that mortgage payment. Right. But when you purchase finance a business, the business is already making the money to make your SBA loan payment, and you're going to get a salary.
I will tell you, as someone who currently has 2 startup businesses, the grind of that is not something I would recommend for probably 95% of people I know. Right. And I've worked with a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people. It is hard.
You're not making
there are no guarantees, and there definitely is not a salary, and there's no one coming to save you.
That's fine.
It's you, and it's done the right way to make money, or it's not, and either way is a real possibility.
That's right.
So, to be a little more clear on what you're doing, just because I know we're getting into this question, it's kind of leading into that naturally. You are helping people who already have businesses, that you're helping people acquire those already made, already making money, already have the processes done businesses. And a lot of these are boomer owned because they're retiring. Maybe it's someone that wants to just exit because they're tired of doing the same thing for 10 years. They want something new, whatever it is. But those are the businesses that you're helping people get SBA loans for, which, like you said, is way more proven. The facts are there. It's not like you just have this great idea and you want to go start something from the ground up and maybe it fails, maybe it doesn't, which the numbers on a new business failing are pretty strong. if it gets through, what is it, year 8, I think there's like a really great chance that after year 8, a business is going to still be alive. I think it's year 8. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that is where these businesses are, like electrical businesses, plumbing businesses, roofing businesses, for people in construction. I think there are so many opportunities to go out and take a business, especially that's not really well run in the marketing space. If you're a corporate marketer and you're really genius at social media and all these things, think about what you can add on to that business instantly with your knowledge. That's the thing that I think people miss is, there's risk, but there is huge upside, like giant upside in these businesses.
Great segue into what I share with that woman or man that's like, what's the risk here?
Yeah.
So if you're buying this business and it's already cash flowing based on old-fashioned marketing of a baby boomer that doesn't believe in email or websites or social media, and he's been old school, just word of mouth, think of what you can do when you have what you have, Stefanie, the marketing experience, the knowledge of, look at you growing your LinkedIn. What if you bought an established business and did that for the business that's established for 15 years? And every time I work with buyers, we put together a business plan. They're blown away about just those little tweaks in personal marketing today, how much more presence and revenue it will bring. Here's one closing thought before we move on. If you're afraid of the risk, corporate will always be there. Okay. Sure. You can always go back to corporate.
Yeah. Good luck going back once you've gotten out this.
But you won't. And that's exactly
it's like letting the lion out of a cage. It is.
Yeah.
There's not much I wouldn't do to not go back to it.
Yeah. And the reason why I decided to niche down into just being a business acquisition loan consultant is because for years I worked at all those various banks as an SBA lender, jack of all trades, taking every single business type credit request, and many of them were startups. The startups, the banks constantly said, no, no, no. And the number one delinquent account in many bank portfolios today would be those startups. They're struggling. You're struggling year 2, year 3, year 4, they're struggling. Something that's working and established and making money, they're doing fine.
And that's a great point. If you are listening to this podcast, you are in a corporate job that you want to even maybe just try something on the side, you don't have to always quit your corporate job to do this. This can be an add-on. Maybe if you have a spouse that, you're going to divide the duties where someone's going to do more ops and if that team is already running like a well-oiled machine, sometimes it might be 5 or 10 hours a week you're spending.
Exactly.
And you don't have to jump all the way off the cliff to be able to get in. And then once you get in, then maybe you decide in a year, hey, I'm good. I trust this. I'm going to go quit that job.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity, I think, that people don't see. And it's just because it's not a little bit more non-traditional. And I think that would be something I would tell, especially women, is there is not a one size fits all. There's not a path that has to be walked a certain way. You might zig and then zag, and you might go up and down and all around, and you can make this work for you in your life. It doesn't mean you have to, because you got to decide it will still be work. Do you want to do that? But there are a lot of corporate jobs out there right now where people are getting phone calls and they're getting told, hey, thanks for however many years, we're letting you go. Nothing in life is truly guaranteed. Corporate jobs aren't guaranteed. Entrepreneurship's not guaranteed. Our health is not guaranteed. And life is short. Go do what you want to do. Don't let the risk and the fear of what might happen stop you from what might happen if you go do it and it works out. We always think about the negative. We are prone to negative thoughts. We're prone to the worst case scenario. Most of the time, if you weigh it out, the worst case scenario is never going to happen.
That's right.
So for this being what you're doing, I think it's just giant opportunity. And if I didn't already have 2 startups and I decided, like, I don't want to do the startup thing anymore, this is what I would do tomorrow. I'd go find the most boring ass business I could find. I would find the thing that no one else wants to screw with. They haven't done a bit of marketing and they have a huge, awesome P&L that like is just raking in cash. And I would buy that sucker and I would put as much marketing collateral into it as I could, and I would see what happens, and then I'd do it again and again and again. And I may end up doing that at some point because it's how you make real long-term wealth. And then you buy 10 of them, put them into one, sell them, ride off into the sunset, and have my mini cow farm.
You are hired, girl. I'm telling you, you are hired. I'm looking at I have a photo on my wall here. It says, "What if everything works out?" That's the message, because that's what we got to be thinking. What if it works out?
I think we never think that way. I mean, I don't know very many people that wake up in the morning and think that way. And sometimes the things in my life that have been the biggest kick in the face, like, and I'm even going through some things right now, not necessarily my business and like a personal thing with where we're living. It's like, it's a real pain in the butt. I don't want to be dealing with it right now. I know that it will happen, and it's going to end up being something that happened for me instead of to me. And we often don't see that until after the fact. Like, me getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. If I see the person who fired me, I would literally hug them and say, thank you. I hated that job. I hated every day I woke up and had to go to it. And I'm so grateful for you being able to see that it was never going to work. I was already miserable. It was 4 or 5 months into the job. I hated it. Thank you for releasing me from that so I could go get over my fear and go do what I should have been doing the whole time.
Right on. And I bet your Sunday evenings, Sunday afternoons are a lot more free filling than they were before.
Free and probably working, but
true. But if you work,
it's because I choose
balance sheet. It's your balance sheet.
Right.
Your work.
Exactly. I choose to work. I choose to do what I do, and I hopefully will continue to want to choose. And if not, then I'll choose something different. That's the thing is, I think it's you have autonomy over your life if you choose to have it, if you choose to grasp it. We just let too many situations control us that really don't have much control. We give it control.
Yeah. I have always loved your fire, girl. You just light me up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I sometimes believe we often just don't think we're worthy.
Right. Yes.
And we don't believe we can do things that we're already doing. Just like with that bank job, like, you're already doing the job. Just give me the title and the money and all those things. And sometimes we do that to ourselves. Like, you're already there. You just don't give yourself the credit for it. So I love what you're doing. I think the opportunity, I just can't get past like what people could do with this if they can just get past their fear. So if someone wants to talk to you about an SBA loan with an acquisition on a business, talk me through the process. What do you do? Let's just say it's me. I want to buy a plumbing business. Maybe I found one. Maybe I don't know of one. How does that work? Talk me through the process.
Right. So I have a business buyer profile document that I have you fill out. It helps me to understand your goals, number one, and then number two, your credentials.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, you're not going to buy a business if you have bad credit and no cash savings.
Yes.
When you buy a house, you have to have good credit and decent cash savings for down payment. The same is applicable for buying a business.
Yeah.
So I have to funnel out because a lot of people think this is just like a credit card application. You apply and you get a business. It doesn't work that way. These are larger loans than buying a home for the majority of everyone out there.
What would you say your average loan is that you're doing right now? I'm curious on that.
Yes. So the SBA has all different loan sizes, but in my space for acquiring businesses, I work with who is called an SBA 7A lender.
Okay.
They deal with loan sizes from $500,000 up to $5 million. Okay. The smaller loans, I don't take those on. They're supported by what is called an SBA Express lender. So if somebody needs a small loan to buy a business, because there are businesses selling for $80,000 or what have you, I'll give them information on who to contact for an express loan. But the loan sizes for buying a business for 7A, $500,000 up to $5 million. The sweet spot for first-time business owners, I believe, are $500,000, $2 million max. Okay. And the reason why I say that is the banks, they get a little bit gun shy on an uncollateralized loan from 2 to 5 million. That's a lot. They can get done. I have seen them done. I have financed a couple of the larger ones, but you better have some good credentials coming to the table on both the seller and the buyer side. But the sweet spot for first time business buyers, 500,000 up to 2 million max.
Okay.
And there are some really decent established businesses out there that will pay a good salary of 100 to 250,000 and have enough net free cash flow to pay that SBA loan payment for the purchase finance project.
Yeah, I mean, that's great living for anyone to think about, walking away from a corporate job. I mean, are you in that six figures, 150, 200,000 range? Well, you literally just copy and paste that into this business. If you have the collateral to do it, you don't lose your $250,000 salary. You just put it in somewhere else. And then you can actually make more money based on the fact that if you go in there and crush it with all of these things we're talking about, optimizations, automations, scaling, all of these things that we can do, pretty easily. Like, if I think about, my dad had a business when I was growing up, very, very good business, lumberyard, one location. And I know what he used to make, and we did zero marketing, like zilch. It was, hey, do you want to buy some lumber? I met you at, wherever. Yeah. No social media, no none of that. And I think about that business now. I often think about that business that I didn't buy from him.
Yeah. Right.
We won't get into that. That's a whole therapy session. But I think about that business and what we could do if we did some marketing, and we also did some automation on like some of our processes and things like that. And then also if we try to scale it, what if we went to 2 locations? What if we went out into a different radius on delivery? All these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this could be a 9-figure business if we had done some of that stuff, if I had bought it. I think about that often. That's true in probably 80 to 90% of these businesses that we're talking about. They're not doing marketing. They're not doing scaling. They're not doing optimization on automation and things like that. They don't know what AI is. They don't know how to run these campaigns. So those are things, I mean, that's really what my husband and I are working on to help these businesses in construction do those things is, hey, why don't we do automation where when you get Google reviews, we have an AI go in and go automatically send this email saying, hey, we just got this, invoice. Thank you so much for the purchase. Would you do a Google review? Right. That way you don't have to remember to go send that email every single time. It's automated and it's done. Then you have 500 5-star reviews instead of 0. And that's how these businesses are going to win with the new blood taking over, I think.
New blood. Yeah. Yeah. The baby boomer blood, they're tired. Yeah. Rightfully so. They're tired.
But there's a lot to be learned from them too. That's the thing. You could keep that person around to give you some memos for a few months, or how does that work with most businesses that are acquired? Are most of these owners just riding off into the sunset like day 2 after the check clears, or are they doing some sort of handoff agreement? I'm curious on that.
Sage question. You want to have the seller, the business owner, to stick around, allowing you to transition in and you negotiate that. And the SBA allows the owner to stay around, transitioning the buyer up to 12 months max.
Okay.
Typically, what I see negotiated is 60 to 90 days. Mm-hmm. If you're buying a business and the seller wants to ride off in the sunset on day 2, there's probably some red flags that need to be seen.
Run the other way, right?
Run the other way is right on.
Unless there's some health concern or something like that, which I know does happen. Yeah. But if someone can't stay around for 3 months, like you said, there's something going on there. Ask questions.
Yeah. And we usually will negotiate. Maybe they're around for the first couple of weeks on site, and then it's just by phone call as needed, or show up if there's a fire to be put out of some sort. The sellers generally pick who the buyer is, and they like them. There's a reason why they picked you to take over their legacy, their business.
So it's like handing their child to someone.
Yeah.
I mean, a business is such a personal thing, and you and I both know what it takes to build a business. And if you've had that business for 10, 20 years and it's been making money, but you went through some shit to get there, like that's for sure. You're not just going to hand it to just anybody. So they have a vested interest in seeing it succeed long term also. And I think that's another good point is there's a lot of businesses that they do close because they can't find anyone to buy them. And especially if they get to the point where they really do want to retire and they can't because they can't find anybody to buy it, these businesses are going to just go away. There's a statistic, you probably know it, but it's millions of businesses that will close every year because of this. They want to sell, they can't find the right person, they can't find the funding, for the person to buy it, and they just close. So this is a really great solution to that. How would you suggest that people find these businesses that want to sell? What does the process look like for that?
Well, platforms online, bizbuysell.com. There's broker listings of businesses. There's sellers that list businesses. And where you have to be careful, Stefanie, is a lot of the listed businesses do not qualify for bank financing because the baby boomers or the Gen X, whatever generation business owners decided to take shortcuts and not pay taxes and not report profits, which that's fine. You chose that. You basically your income early on, and now when you want to sell the business, you can't earn it twice because you didn't report your profits and didn't pay taxes.
Yeah.
So it does come around full circle, and a lot of business owners today think, I don't want to pay taxes. So CPA, write everything off or do whatever you can. I don't want to pay taxes. And the CPA just says, okay, if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. Yeah. What we need to bring home to these business owners that want to take those shortcuts, when it's time to sell and your tax returns don't show sufficient cash flow to support the buyer's loan project, you're going to be listed forever. And as you hear, 80% of the businesses out there never sell because they didn't report their profits to the IRS. It's that simple.
That's a really big deal.
It is.
It's not a big deal when you start the business and you're in year 1 and you make $5. It's a big deal when you're in year 10 and you're making $5 million and you can't sell for 4 or 5 or 6 times EBITDA because you didn't pay your taxes. So do it on the up and up. My dad always used to say there's never a bad time to do the right thing. That's how he ran his business.
I love
and
that.
I know that's a really hard thing to do. I mean, I don't think anyone just gets real excited about paying taxes. And there are legitimate write-offs that you can, doesn't mean you don't take business write-offs. Right. You need that. Yeah. But there has to be some balance because if your end goal is to sell this business, you have to be on the up and up. That's what you got to do. So start it right. If you start effed up, you end effed up. And that's with CPA, that's a very first thing I outsource is how can I make enough money to have a bookkeeper and a CPA that knows what the hell's going on? Because I don't wear orange and I'm not going to go to jail for not paying taxes. Right? Orange is not my color, Dad. So I just want to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And I think that's the best way. Going back to the expert thing, you figure out what your goals are for your business. And then as you grow, you have to find experts in taxes, strategy, CPA, all those things that grow with your business. And that may not be the same tax firm that you used to use when you were making $500 a year selling jewelry at the farmer's market.
Right.
It's not the same thing. So find someone who knows what the heck's going on for small business accounting. And then as you grow and maybe you're a mid business, instead of being super small, you might have to change firms. You may not work with the same person you went to high school with.
Oh, bring it home, girl. Cause that's a common issue with small business owners that now have grown to middle market. They still have support on the small side and it's complicated. That's why you have to hire the experts and constantly be looking for advisors. Those of us that have walked through the fire, like we said earlier, and paid the ignorant taxes.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
Absolutely.
True.
One thing I would say to business people that are in the corporate world that maybe know small business owners and want to get into this is just ask questions to people you know.
Right.
If you're in your town and 5 people that are, 65 and have this amazing business, just say, hey, have you thought about what your plan is for when you decide to retire? Have you ever thought about selling? Those types of conversations If they don't want to talk about it, they're just going to say, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And then you just move on to the next person. What if they say, actually, I've been looking for a buyer and you are someone I know, like, and trust, and you have this industry knowledge, or maybe you don't know anything about the business, but I'd be willing to teach you. And then what happens if you're buying that business because of that conversation? So don't underestimate the power of in-person relationships and networking in your circle, or maybe, one step away from, Kevin Bacon, and you ask someone that knows someone, hey, do you know anyone has a business? Because I know a lot of people, that's how they get their businesses, is they talk to an uncle or they talk to a friend of a friend that just happens to have something they want to sell. And then all of a sudden, here you go. Now, they would never list that on a small business website. They don't even know those things exist.
That's right.
You have to remember who we're dealing with here. People that are not technologically savvy are probably not going to list their business on a technology website. They're going to just literally look for somebody in the store that they know that wants to buy their business.
That's right. If you're an avid customer showing up all the time, you love the business, you love the product, you love the service.
Yep.
Nose around. And my daddy too, he always taught me, nose around and ask questions.
Yeah.
And I looked up to him because he was a fisherman. So we would go to the bait shop and get our night crawlers and minnows, and he would nose around and ask the business owner questions. Where are they biting? What lakes? How deep do we go with the line? He'd ask questions. I'm like, wow, you're really getting some good info.
Yeah. And think about how many people walk in and don't ask, either because, number one, they're so arrogant they think they know, or they just don't have the courage to ask, or they think the person is too busy to tell them. And that's one thing I'll tell people, especially women. Never assume that someone doesn't want to share their information with you, because people love to talk about themselves. We all do. All of us. We love to tell our stories. We love to talk about what we know. If you ask people questions, or if you ask people for help, most of the time people will be very generous with their time and their information. That is not always true, but most of the time people will, especially people who are older that want to leave a legacy. The more people they share with, the more legacy they share. So don't underestimate the power of that. I mean, we talk a lot about tech and Gen Z and millennials, and I am a millennial. I have learned some damn good lessons from Gen X and boomers, and a lot of them have come from men. So don't underestimate the power of that, and don't let that, oh, well, I'm young and they don't know how to use Facebook. So what? They built a $10 million business. You think they needed Facebook for that? No, they didn't. There's a lot of value, and don't forget that. And I think my organizations, the same thing. Don't forget the value that these people, these pillars, they still have value, even if they don't know what Facebook is.
If you don't ask questions, you're not going to catch any fish. All you're going to catch is a sunburn. That's it.
That is for sure. And probably a hard time, and you'll be buying your dinner instead of catching it, right?
You know it.
I love that. Well, talking about the next generation, I mean, we obviously are both women. We both are business owners. What would you say that your advice for 25-year-old Deb would be? If you had to go back and say, I would tell myself this, what would you tell yourself?
Ask more questions and fight harder for me. I did fight the fight. I should have fought sooner.
Yeah.
I was a little bit more politically correct.
Yeah.
And, back then, nobody would have done what I did. But today, in today's world, you have to be bold. You have to be brave. It's not 1992 anymore.
Yeah.
So I would tell my younger self that. And I would also tell my younger self, because they didn't teach us how to buy established money-making businesses in college or anywhere for years.
Really, truly. I mean, there should be, I would love to see more education and more. There is people like you and Cody Sanchez, people like that are talking about it more, but it's still pretty rare to hear about it.
It is. People don't know about it. So I would tell my younger self, I would have been like you, Stefanie. I would have bought your dad's business.
Yeah.
My father didn't own a business, but now that I look back, 10, 15 years ago, I wish I would have bought a couple businesses.
Yeah.
Now I get to teach people how to do it. And that motivates me. I'm at a place in my life as a Gen X girl where I I'm enjoying what I do, supporting people and educating them. I don't want to take on buying a business at this point in my life. I've got maybe 7 years left before I ride off to the sunset. But that's what I would tell all of the younger folks out there. Good golly, you all have all the corporate goods, the millennials. You not all have the corporate experience, and you know so much more about branding and technology and efficiencies. Take that and really consider acquiring these gems of businesses that we've heard are called boring. And they're boring because they're not maybe AI sophisticated. We'll turn it into it, right?
Turn it into businesses don't even need all of that. I mean, I still talk to some clients because I have a lot of clients in the construction industry. Certain things make sense for them, like the Google reviews. Like every local business can use Google reviews. But do they need to have like some sophisticated app where it's built out and blah, 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 blah? Maybe not. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. It's not one size fits all. And that's why I keep saying like the value of what they have, it's easier to bring your value to that than to start something new and do it on your own. It is freaking hard, hear me say, to have a startup.
Yes, it is.
And it takes even if you have everything it takes, it still can fail. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just can still fail because the business isn't the right product market fit. Maybe it's just you don't have the time to get to hockey stick to where it's worth doing any longer. It's just really hard. You got to have a lot of support. So, if I had to do it over again, like I said, I would have bought that business for my dad. Mm-hmm. But one thing I will say is I also didn't know what I know now because that was pre-corporate for me. So I left my dad's small business and I went to a huge business of Fortune 500 and I grew that business with them under the helm and the paycheck of corporate and the CapEx that they had to grow a business. Boy, that was a weird thing when I got out, and it wasn't like, hey, we need to hire X. We need these machines. We need X. Just write a check.
Right?
There's no check to write now. It's like,
no check.
I had to go sell X to be able to do Y. And that's okay. That's how life is in real life in small business. But I learned from both sides. So I saw it on my dad's small business, and then I went to giant machine corporate, learned a ton, got really challenged. Now I feel like I'm putting those two things together to make what is something that I love and that can also help businesses that are big and small businesses. So because I understand that juxtaposition. But if you don't have that experience of corporate, sometimes it is hard to know what you don't know. But I still think you could do it. I could have run my dad's business. He would have helped me. I could have made it something, bigger and better and just continued it. I didn't choose to do that. I choose not to look at it as a regret, but who knows? That might come back around at some point. That business is still out there. Mm-hmm. I just want people to be open-minded. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is what would I tell 25-year-old Stefanie is probably, like you said, don't take shit. Stop taking shit from people.
Right.
Stop trying to be like everyone else because you're not. And you don't win that way. You'll never win as someone else in someone else's shoes and someone else's skin. You're only going to win as you because winning where you're not authentic is losing every day. It doesn't matter how high the title is, how high the money is, you will be miserable. That comes back to self-worth is if you don't love who you are and you don't appreciate and value yourself, it doesn't matter what's sitting on your desk as a title or what's in your bank account. You will never be happy.
That's
so
right.
That is the thing I would drive towards is that instead of I spent so much time trying to climb corporate ladders and trying to get a certain figure and trying to get a certain esteem of like respect. And I never would have gotten that because I was driving towards something that wasn't even really what I wanted. It's just what I thought I should go after. Yeah. So find the thing that's success for you. That's what I would define it as. It's like, what is your success? What's Deb's success? What's Stefanie's success? What's your success? And then go as hard as you can at that and don't stop.
I love it.
Because the troubles and the rough seas will come, my friend.
Yep, we will.
But that's true in life, not just in entrepreneurship. But in entrepreneurship, it's all on you. The buck stops with you. And so if you have an established business like you're talking about, at least you probably have people in a system that works already, and you don't have to make every single thing up from scratch.
Oh, yeah. And they help. They want the business to succeed with new ownership.
Absolutely.
It's just like a corporate promotion, for crying out loud, except the difference is it's your balance sheet. It's your Sunday nights.
Yeah.
And you might be working, to catch up on things like you do for corporate as well. But it feels so much better when it is yours.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you want to walk away, you walk away with something. You have equity in something.
That's
if the
right.
business is successful. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned when I left my corporate job. Is I spent 10 years giving every drop I had, every single thing I had, I gave to that job. And when I walked away, I got my last paycheck, and that was it.
And has any one of your past supervisors ever stayed in touch with you as a friend?
No.
Doubt it.
I have some people that I know that I was close to that I'm friends with, a lot of my vendors, a lot of people that I was mentoring. But no, I mean, I haven't heard from any of them. It was like, I thought I was so damn valuable. I mean, people are like, everyone's replaceable. And I'm like, except me. I kind of had that in my mind. Like, I was doing a lot.
Yeah.
And the truth is, probably they haven't replaced me exactly, but did the thing go on? The machine kept churning, and it was like, it ate me up and then it spit me out, and I was out. With a small business, and also I will say on a personal note, with your family and your life, that is not true.
Mm-hmm.
You give everything you have into something that doesn't really care about you because it's a business. Like, it's not their fault. It's not calling corporate bad. I'm not saying anything bad. That's how the machine has to work.
Mm-hmm.
If one person could stop it, it's not a very good machine, right? It has to keep going like a train. When you have a family that counts on you and you have a business that's yours that you own, it's different. So look around and see what you're prioritizing. Because I looked around and I was like, wow, girlfriend got it out of whack. She is worried about like titles and money, and my husband got COVID. That's when my realignment happened real quick. When he was in the hospital, and I had been gone 221 nights that year. And I knew if he didn't come home, I was going to have to live with the fact that I had been gone all year for something that didn't even really care about me. Right. And I said, I don't know how and I don't know what, but I'm not going to do this anymore. Not the same thing. I will not continue. So look at your life and see, is there something in there that you're not prioritizing that should be a priority? Maybe it's your own health. Maybe it's your family, your business, whatever it is. But how do you realign that? And I think it's important for us to audit our lives pretty often. I try to do that pretty often, and it's hard because you got to be real honest with yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Honesty hurts, but it's worth it, though.
Especially when it's to ourselves. Looking in that mirror can be really tough, but you have to do it for sure.
Yes, right.
Well, I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. I want to end with one question. If someone wants to look into buying a business with an SBA loan that's already an established business, how should they connect with you? And I know we talked about that form that they fill out, so I'm guessing that's the first step, but should they reach you on LinkedIn? They should go to your website. What's the way to learn more about this?
I'd say my website's the best place to go, debcurtis.com, and there's a contact tab there and 3 options. And one of them is, are you a searcher? Are you looking to buy? And we start the conversation from there.
Amazing. And if you are not following Deb on LinkedIn, highly recommend it. She posts a lot of value every single day. And she's one of those ladies, like I said, shows up every day and really just does what she says she's going to do. And keeping those commitments to yourself, that matters. So proud of you for doing that for 2 years in a row. I'm going on year 2 myself, and it is a lot of work. So good for you for doing it, because I know how hard it can be to continue to show up.
Year 3, here we go. And I made the commitment again. I'm not good. Listen, when you put all that time in for 2 years, I am not going to walk away from it now.
No, I don't now. Yeah, for sure. 100%. Well, thank you so much, Deb. You're amazing. I love your energy and your story, and you're helping so many people. And I really appreciate what you do.
Well, I feel the same about you. You keep on rocking it, girl. Love you.
Thank you. Love you too. Thank you for joining the Grit Blueprint. We will be back with another amazing episode, helping people figure out the grit that it takes to be successful in life and in business.